I remember the first time a coaching client mentioned my podcast. I said, "Oh, that's cool. You've heard of," and then I named my much more popular show, the bigger one. And she had no idea what I was talking about. She found me from my super small niche podcast, which convinced her I was the guy who could help her. That was the day I unlearned a huge mistake that a lot of podcasters still make. Most business podcasters focus on downloads instead of conversions. And so today we are going to talk about how you can use your podcast to grow your business. We're going to be talking about common mistakes and pitfalls, what you should look for instead, why this is a great strategy, and then how to implement it. Hey everybody, my name's Joe Casabona. I'm the evangelist here at rss.com, and our goal is to help as many podcasters as possible, whether it's grow their show, create a fantastic hobby, or, of course, support your business by making money. Let's talk about the why. There are lots of reasons why you should use your podcast for your business. First of all, there is the relationship building aspect of it. Listeners are spending 30 plus minutes with you, which builds trust. Podcasting is an intimate medium. And this is an amazing way to get people to know, like, and trust you. There are lots of reports out there that talk about how podcast listeners trust a podcast host more than any other medium. And so this is an opportunity for you to show your potential customers how trustworthy you are. Next up is authority positioning. Being a host puts you in the expert position. I actually think a lot of business owners make the mistake of launching an interview podcast because they feel like they should have interviews, but that takes the spotlight off of them. What they should actually do is, yes, have interviews because it mixes up the content and makes it more dynamic, but you should be the expert. Have solo episodes where you dive deep into your clients or customers or potential customers' problems, but bring on people who are having the problem and solve it for them right then and there. Supplement with other experts, but remember that podcasting is a great way to build your authority. Podcasting is also long form content, which allows for deeper conversations than what you would have on social media. This is a place for you to really explore an idea instead of just doing the attention grabbing hook and then a grossly oversimplified thing. You can actually teach on a podcast. Podcast listeners are typically high value educated customers. They are usually college educated, they have higher incomes, and they're more likely to buy from podcasts. And so this is an opportunity to reach your ideal audience, right? Your podcast listeners are, again, they know, like, and trust you, and they are ready to spend money because they see value with you. And finally, content created on a podcast is easier to repurpose into multiple formats. Have your video going. You don't have to release the video, but you can create short form clips. You can be really intentional about those, especially with a solo episode. You can turn your transcripts into blog posts, which we make super easy over at rss.com. And it's just a really great place for you to start in a place where you're thinking or talking through something, and you can take that thought process and turn it into other forms of content. Now, I know you're thinking that this all sounds well and good, but how do you actually do it? I'm not getting enough downloads. And this is where I start thinking about the common mistakes or pitfalls that a lot of people make when they get into podcasting for their business. First of all, they're focused too much on the downloads. If I have a podcast on underwater basket weaving, and there are only 1,000 people who are interested in underwater basket weaving, and 700 people listen, I've captured 70% of my potential audience. You want to focus on the business metrics. How many people are listening to your podcast, then joining your mailing list? How many people are signing up for discovery calls with you because they came across your podcast episode that was linked in an article you wrote and they reached out? Those are the kind of things you want to think about. And that brings me to the next mistake or pitfall: failing to have a clear conversion strategy. I think you see social media and people think, all right, well, I know I'm doing well on LinkedIn when more people follow me on LinkedIn, or I'm doing well on Twitter when more people follow me on Twitter. So it's easy to think, well, my show is successful if I get a lot of downloads. But you want to have a clear call to action. You want to have a strategy to get people from your podcast to your mailing list or to your offer. And that building out that path will allow you to measure success in the way that makes the most sense for you, which means that you need to create content that leads to some offer. And I'm not saying your podcast should only be about sales. First and foremost, your podcast should be about serving your audience and creating value for your audience. But if you are creating content that eventually leads to your offer, that will make your podcast a great marketing engine for your business. For a while, I was doing live coaching calls on my podcast. That got people to hear how I coached and then reach out about me coaching them. And then I would make their episode live. And now I've switched business models a little bit and I'm experimenting with other ways where I can make this happen. I need to create a really good offer for my content. And having a clear call to action, which is the next mistake, is another important aspect of that. So you want to have your offer, you want to have clear calls to action. I'll talk about more of this strategy in a little bit. But getting people to your mailing list, I think, is the best possible thing you can do with your podcast. Because from your podcast to your mailing list, you can promote the episodes, but you can promote other things and provide a ton more value directly in people's inboxes. And then finally, you want to build relationships with guests. I know people who will say, oh, yeah, well, my show is just casual conversations. Yeah, I'll talk to anybody who has an interesting story. No, you should talk to people who can, A, provide value for your audience, and B, are related to your business in some way. Something that I'm doing with my primary show right now is I help busy solopreneur parents build systems so that they can spend more time with their family. And for a long time, I was just talking about ideas for automations or systems and things like that. And now I'm interviewing other solopreneurs on how they are building their specific systems. So I'm talking to them who I can help, but then they're giving my audience ideas and I can build upon that. Your podcast is not a separate entity from your business, and you should treat your podcast as part of the business, just like Facebook ads are part of your business. Okay, so let's actually talk some strategies here, right? We'll talk a little bit about content strategy alignment, and then we'll talk about creating a networking tool and leveraging those guest relationships. This is really, you don't want to use your guests, but you are creating a great opportunity to work with your guests. So let's talk about content strategy alignment first. Here's, I think, the main thing where I see a big disconnect between business owners and their podcast. They're not mapping their episodes to the customer journey or sales funnel. They're talking about things they want to talk about. But really, you should think about your customer journey. My friend Becky actually does a really great exercise with a customer journey map where you think about all the problems your customer has and where they are and how you can meet them where they are. And so if you're, let's say, talking about underwater basket weaving, the first thing you probably need to figure out is like, how can I weave a basket underwater without suffocating? So maybe you have an episode on that. Oh, okay, great. So now I have a scuba tank. What equipment do I need? What's the right technique? How do I make sure that my basket is not just like a soggy mess when it's done, right? They are. You want to meet them on their journey and get them into your sales funnel. So you want to create content that solves the problems, especially the ones that your business addresses, right? I can help people in all sorts of ways. I was a web developer for a long time. I taught in the classroom. I'm a longtime podcaster, but my podcast focuses on systems and automation. Those are the things that I really try to drive home. How can we use systems and automation to free up our time so we can spend it with our kids instead of being chained to our desk? You should create a mission statement for your podcast that is closely aligned to, if not exactly the same as your business, so that you can create content around that mission statement. A couple of ways that you can do that are these strategic episodes to kind of showcase your expertise. Do case study episodes, right? Talk about clients that you've helped or products that have helped your customers. Maybe bring some of them on, because then talking about the repurposing, you are getting testimonials as well as creating great podcast content. Or, like I said, I was doing live coaching calls for a while. Do some live coaching. Bring on people who are having the problems that you solve in your business and talk them through some of those problems on the show. Now you're helping actual people, you're creating great content, and you're also building a portfolio of work for yourself. But that's really only part of the battle, right? Creating great content is one thing, but then you need to get the conversion. Because if you don't have a call to action, if you're not leading people who are listening to your podcast to you to work more directly with you, then it's just a dead end. So you want to get that conversion. You should have lead magnets specific to episode topics. My main lead magnet right now is an automations database. So I spend a lot of time talking about automations I've built. And then I say, by the way, you can get all of these automations I'm talking about for free if you sign up for my mailing list. That's a compelling call to action too, right? It's not forced. I'm not pausing the flow of the show to be like, this episode is brought to you by my mailing list. I am talking about automations that my audience can build. And then I'm saying, hey, if you want a head start, get this database. So for your business, as you're thinking through some of these things, what is a lead magnet that works for some of your episodes? If you're talking about how to do Facebook ads or how to improve your LinkedIn profile to generate leads. Maybe you can have a LinkedIn profile audit sheet, right? Maybe you can have an ABCs of Facebook ads. Get people who are interested in the topic of your podcast to get something extra by joining your mailing list. And this is a place where you can really use show notes effectively too, right? Because you might have multiple calls to action. So always have people. Now, I should say, I'm going to walk this back for a minute. I think you should have one clear call to action in your podcast, and you should repeat it in the beginning, the middle, and the end. But you might be mentioning multiple resources or other interesting things. And so use show notes effectively. For my lead magnets, I have a speakable URL that has some UTM code. So I know when somebody is coming to my mailing list from the podcast. But that's another strategy we'll talk about in a minute when we talk about how to measure business impact. Because the next thing I want to talk about is using your show for networking. And before we get into this, I want to make it really clear that you should not take advantage of your guests by trying to sell them at the end of the interview. I have seen that too many times, and that just makes you a jerk. Like, that doesn't instill trust. But there are ways to do this correctly. So first of all, talk to guests you can help. I have solopreneurs on my show. I have solopreneur parents on my show. They are sharing their story. I'm sharing my expertise. They might be sharing their expertise to help my audience as well. As we talk, we learn that there could be more to this relationship here. I've gone on podcasts where people have had me as a podcasting subject matter expert. And at the end of that, they hired me because they liked what I was talking about. And I didn't come on trying to sell them. And the same thing, people come on my show, they see my systems, they say, do this for me. And I'm never doing it in a smarmy way. But the podcast naturally opens up opportunities for networking because you are connecting with people in your niche, in your space, and you're being generous with your time and they're being generous with their time. So this is a great opportunity to grow your business. So how do you actually measure success? Go beyond download metrics. Instead, think about how many people are joining your mailing list. How many people are tagging you on social media or reaching out in DMs because they heard an episode? How many people are commenting on your stuff more? Are you ranking higher in Google because you're taking your podcast episodes and turning them into blog posts and newsletters? To understand that, you need to track lead sources from your podcast, right? So like I mentioned the short URL, I know where people are coming from when they join my mailing list. You can do this really granularly with UTM codes where you don't just have the podcast, but you have the title of the podcast if you have multiple podcasts. and you have the episode name. So you could say, oh, wow, this episode is really converting. My episode on 3 automations I use every day from easy to hard is doing really well, getting people on my mailing list because it's directly related to my mailing list. So make sure to have those calls to action and make sure you're actually doing some tracking on the back end and seeing where those clicks are coming from. The other thing you want to do is, yes, you want to calculate the ROI on your podcast investment, but I need to make this one really clear. It might cost you $100 to $500 per episode, but if you are landing one client every 2 months, is it worth it? Or if you're getting 2 customers per month to your cohort-based course, is it worth it? That's what you need to think about. We'll spend thousands of dollars to go to conferences to network, and then we'll say, well, it was worth it because it was networking, but we'll look at paying an editor for a podcast episode and, oh, well, I don't know if it's worth it. The other thing you need to remember is this text right here on the bottom. This is a long-term strategy. You're not going to launch your podcast and then a month later be flushed with clients. This is the best way for you to show people that you are showing up generously, that you are giving your time to teach people and create value. And that takes time, but it also reaps better rewards because you can blow $1,000 on Facebook ads or Instagram ads and see crickets because people are seeing you and scrolling past you. People who see a Facebook ad might not be ready to spend $1,000 with you. Maybe they want your free thing and then they immediately opt out because they just wanted the free thing. But people who listen to your podcast really care about you and they know, like, and trust you. So let's wrap this up with a couple of practical examples and how RSS.com can help you with these goals, right? First, something that you can experiment with is talk through a problem. Maybe it's a real client problem. Maybe it's something that you hear often. Maybe it's an objection. And then make your call to action for people to jump on a free discovery call with you. Add your Calendly link or your cal.com link in your show notes and have people book a discovery call with you. Maybe you can even offer free coaching calls, shorter, maybe 20 minutes, and make them live on the podcast. Make sure that you are attributing product sales to podcast content. Or here's one of my favorite things to do when I'm working on a new course. I will test the course material in the podcast episode and ask for feedback. If you're writing a book, test the book material in your podcast and ask for feedback. Now you're creating a feedback loop and you're building hype around this thing that you're creating all through your podcast, which is also repurposing, right? So how can RSS.com help you with this? Well, first of all, we give you a free website with your show. You can add your own links and buttons. You can add a donation link for direct monetization, or you can make that link go to your schedule a call page. We also offer free transcripts if you are on any of our paid plans, which means you don't need to pay extra to get the transcript. You can take the transcript, feed it into AI, have it organize it, and then use that outline to write a blog post, which will help with SEO and content repurposing. But we also have a bunch of other monetization options that you should check out over at rss.com. So to recap, your podcast is a great business asset as long as you do it the right way. Don't focus on downloads, focus on conversions. Make sure that your content aligns with your customer journey and have a clear call to action to get people on your mailing list, to book a free call with you, maybe even to buy your product, and repurpose the content you're creating. Do this and you have a great long-term content strategy that will establish your authority. It'll help you build trust and it'll bring clients in the door. My name's Joe Casabona. I'm the evangelist here at RSS.com. If you have any questions about what I talked about here today, I'd love to read them in the comments below. Definitely head over to rss.com if you are not a customer and check us out. We want to help podcasters make as much money as possible, whether it's through their business, sponsorship, donations, or any of the other monetization options out there. So thanks so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you out there.